Our story begins during the Naboo battles, as four key events are taking place. In the plasma refinery, Jedi Knights Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi are taking on the Sith apprentice, Darth Maul. Padme Amidala, Sabe, and Captain Panaka are leading a group of Naboo security troops up to the throne room. Down in the plains, the Gungans are fighting for Naboo against the heavy firepower of the battle droids. And in space, the Naboo N1 starfighters are going to battle against the droid control ship, and among the fighters is the young Anakin Skywalker. But one by one, things were beginning to fall apart. In the plasma refinery, Obi-Wan waited angrily for the red ray shield doors to open, as on the other side of this door, his master Qui-Gon Jinn was laying down, dying after being stabbed. When the doors finally opened, Obi-Wan used his angered emotions to enhance his speed and power, keeping up with the Sith Lord strike for strike, but Maul pushed Kenobi over the edge. The Jedi barely managed to hang on inside of the reactor shaft, but when he made his move, jumping up, Maul countered by ripping steam pipes off of the wall, throwing them down into the shaft. The burning hot pipes crashed hard into Kenobi, and he was thrown back down into the reactor, dying as Maul listened to his screams fade. Maul looked to Qui-Gon on his final breaths, and he left the room in victory. Up in the palace, the group of Padme and Panaka would enter the throne room to capture Gunray and Rune Hako, only to find that the room was empty. Moments later, Sabe and her group began running toward the throne room as well, but then something happened. The doors to the throne room were suddenly sealed shut from a remote control elsewhere. Padme, Panaka, and the security guards all looked around as explosives were activated, and after about 5 seconds, the throne room would erupt, killing Queen Amidala in the blast as Sabe looked in with horror. In space, Anakin Skywalker and R2-D2 had their starfighter hit by a vulture droid, but instead of turning into the control ship, they were facing the planet. Anakin and R2 would crash into Naboo with their starfighter exploding, as they would not make it out of this battle alive. The rest of the N1 starfighters were taken down or forced to retreat, and this meant the end for the Gungans. Without the destruction of the control ship, the Gungans were quickly defeated from here, with many of them surrendering to be captured by the droids. Gunray and Hako stood with uncertainty in a tower, looking over at what used to be the throne room. A hologram of Darth Sidious was standing with them, as Sidious had given them the command to blow up the throne room. Gunray said they've gone too far. The Republic will wipe them out for this. Sidious scolded Gunray, asking the Neimoidian when he will finally learn to trust him. Moments later, Maul entered this room and reported that every facet of the battle has become a victory for the Federation and for the Sith. Sidious said that this was very good, and he gave his approval for the next stages of the Naboo occupation. Droid transports continued dropping battle droids to every city and village, with tanks rolling through the streets, rounding up survivors. The Gungan swamps were overrun by droid patrols. Captured Gungans were marched into labor camps, build new supply depots for the Federation. Plasma refineries were now under full control by the Federation, and their energy was redirected to droid factories. By nightfall, every street was guarded, every transmission was monitored. The Federation was going further than Gunray had expected, all under the command of the Sith. And on Coruscant, the Jedi Council had lost all contact with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. Naboo had seemingly gone dark, so the Council immediately called a meeting with the newly elected Chancellor Palpatine to determine how the Republic will proceed. All signs were pointing to the Federation going far beyond anything that the Jedi or Senate had expected, and while meeting with Palpatine, a transmission would come in from Naboo. Palpatine answered to find Sio Bibble, a member of the Naboo Royal Council, and Bibble had access to secure frequency for now. He proceeded to tell Palpatine and the Jedi of the brutal occupation going on. He described the bombing of the Theed Palace that killed Queen Amidala, and now in Naboo security, many citizens and all surviving Gungans have been rounded up and put into supply chains to give the Federation all of the plasma that they could ever want. Bibble said this is far beyond what anyone expected. The Federation is out of control. But before he could continue, a lightsaber was ignited through his back. Sio fell, and his hologram was replaced by a hooded Zabrak man. He looked around to the Jedi, telling them that the master and apprentice sent here died to his blade. Naboo is now under the control of the Federation and the Sith. The message was then cut off. Yoda, Windu, and the others were shocked. Qui-Gon was right about the Sith, and they had refused to see it. Chancellor Palpatine said he feels a great responsibility to protect his home world and his people. Whoever these Sith are, he cannot show fear to them. He said that the Republic must fight back against this, but without an army, he isn't sure what to do. So, Mace looked up with determination in his eyes, telling Palpatine that the Jedi are sworn to protect the Republic, and with Naboo in danger, they will do what they must to go and rescue the planet. Palpatine thanked them for their bravery and loyalty, and as soon as the council left his office, Sidious contacted Darth Maul and told his apprentice to get out of Naboo. It's time for Nute Gunray to take the fall for all of this. Maul told his master it will be done, and he ended the message. Sidious sat back in his chair, pleased with everything. He saw Gunray as a weak, pathetic leader for the Federation. Sure, he did whatever Sidious asked, but it was out of fear and profit. Sidious ultimately decided that the best option in all of this was to eliminate the Queen, the Jedi on Naboo, and now to send the Jedi into Naboo, setting the precedent to lead the Republic in war when the time comes. When the Jedi finally arrived, they found droid battalions patrolling every district of Theed. The Gungan swamps had become prison zones, and the people of Naboo lived under constant surveillance. Naboo would see a mini-war with Jedi support. Yoda himself led the first wave of Jedi Masters and Knights, landing in the forests, taking on tanks and battle droids. Windu organized the strike teams across the main rivers outside of the city, hitting on droid convoys and plasma transports, while Plo Koon took command of any stealth operations, trying to rescue captured citizens and destroying the Federation's command relays. But every victory was coming with a cost. The Federation, under Sidious's command, was retaliating with bombardments that targeted entire villages. Sidious decided it was best to wear down the Jedi here, take out as many masters as he could in this mini-war, and ultimately Gunray would fall. But for now, war would work. The Jedi soon realized that the Naboo battles were not one they could just rush through, as every aggressive move risked the lives of civilians. Weeks would drag into months. Yoda coordinated from the waterfalls of Naboo, meditating every night to sense enemy positions. Windu became a sort of legend among the resistance here, his purple blade cutting through ranks of destroyer droids as he led desperate pushes to reclaim the city. In one of the more brutal battles here, Jedi Masters Ki-Adi-Mundi and Yarael Poof fell together, clashing against waves of battle droids as they covered fleeing refugees that were rescued from a labor camp. Yarael sacrificed himself by destroying a droid transport corps that was bearing down on the civilians. He died in the explosion. Ki-Adi-Mundi fell as well, protecting them. Their deaths motivated the Jedi and the Naboo people to keep up with the resistance. And at last, as the second month drew to an end, enough civilians were rescued and taken off-world by the Jedi so they could launch a full assault on Theed without worrying about Gunray targeting civilians. Gunray's army crumbled under the coordinated assault from the 200 Jedi that were now here. Theed was retaken, Gunray was captured alive, and placed deep into a Republic prison. Thousands of Naboo civilians were dead, entire regions of the planet were burned and destroyed, and the Federation was under a huge investigation under the supervision of Palpatine. This was ultimate victory for Palpatine. He could choose a new leader of the Federation, one that was just as greedy as Gunray, but not nearly as weak. And Palpatine was quietly spreading propaganda that the Jedi interference on Naboo was the leading reason that so many civilians died. Either way, Naboo was freed. The new queen was placed in directly by Palpatine as well, Queen Coruscant, a corrupt queen that was bought by Sidious and would do whatever he asked. Years would go by, and every day, Yoda would regret what happened to Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and the young Skywalker. He deeply regretted not sending in more reinforcements to Naboo, and his greatest concern was now the Sith. In the mini-war with the Federation, the Zabrak Sith, who invaded Naboo and killed the Jedi, had never showed himself. Yoda, Windu, and the rest of the Council carried a constant paranoia, knowing that the Sith Master and Apprentice were out in the galaxy, waiting for something. But within the Sith ranks, as they laid low in the shadows, building up conflict in the galaxy, some conflict began to form within the Sith themselves. After the invasion of Naboo, Darth Maul found himself being treated as nothing more than an assassin, rather than a true apprentice. The emergence of Dooku into the Sith plans was disturbing, and every day it seemed more and more like Sidious trusted Dooku more than he trusted Maul. When the three of them would meet up, Maul and Dooku didn't get along. Dooku saw himself as both the superior duelist and political mind. He really didn't see much use for Maul other than being an assassin after all, and Sidious had to constantly ensure both of them that they were key to the plans of the Sith. Instead of building Grievous, Sidious planned to use Maul to lead the Separatist army when the time comes. And because he was now the shadow leader of the Federation, getting them into the Separatist alliance would be easier than expected. But still, as days passed, Dooku saw Maul burning with hatred, wanting to fight anyone who stood in his way. Dooku saw himself as the true heir to the galaxy, and he saw himself as being in Maul's way, knowing it was only a matter of time until Maul attacks. He was reckless. They distrusted each other completely, both dreaming of the day that they could stand alone beside their master. Sidious finally would know the truth. He must choose, and he decided that Maul has exhausted all of his usefulness. When the time finally came, Sidious made his choice. He told Maul that there was a secret Jedi hiding on the jungle world of Felucia, a target too dangerous to ignore. Hungry to prove himself, Maul would leave at once, eager to fight another Jedi. Felucia was a brutal world of plants and different beasts, and as Maul moved through the mist, something felt wrong about all of this. Finally, he arrived at the coordinates that Sidious had given him. There was no sign of Jedi, and then he heard the slow, smooth sound of a lightsaber igniting behind him. Maul turned, expecting to face down a Jedi, but saw a red light reflecting off of the water, and Maul felt a deep, sad feeling of betrayal. It was Dooku, and Dooku smiled at Maul, telling him that it seems that Sidious has made his choice. Maul didn't hesitate for a moment. He screamed in pure anger and struck first, fast and vicious, movements fueled by rage. Dooku met him head-on, with calm deflections, weaving smooth swings that turned aside every strike from Maul. Maul would leap onto a massive root, slashing downward, but Dooku slid aside and sent a force blast crashing into him. Maul tumbled through the glowing fungus, exploding in bursts of blue and green goo. He rose again, spinning his saber wildly as bugs were drifting around them. Dooku moved quickly now, blocking a combo strike from Maul, then twisted and carved right across Maul's robes and searing his ribs, sending Maul stumbling backwards. Vines then tore loose as Dooku reached out, wrapping them around Maul's legs. Maul struggled to get up. Dooku ripped Maul's saber away, hurling it out into the mud, and then his hand rose again, and a storm of blue lightning tore through the air. Maul screamed as the blast threw him to the ground. Dooku stepped closer to finish this, smiling with dark glee, lifting his blade into the air. Maul could only think of Sidious and his betrayal, but right as Dooku's blade was about to come down, a sharp blast echoed through the mist. A sniper bolt ripped through the fog and struck Dooku cleanly. The Count staggered through the mud. Maul looked up, rejuvenated, pulling his saber back into his hands, swiping forward to cut the head from Dooku. And as Dooku fell, Maul turned to the fog to see a woman in white clothes and black armor emerge. Maul recognized her from his mission reports on Naboo. It was Sabe, former handmaiden to Queen Amidala. As Sabe stared at Maul, her journey to this moment reflected in her mind. Years ago, when she watched the Theed throne room explode with Padme inside of it, her entire world had collapsed. Padme was everything to Sabe. They were extremely close. They grew up together, and she was beyond being her best friend. Sabe would have done anything for Padme, and seeing her explode in that moment ignited a fire in Sabe that she didn't know was there. Her grief hardened into something sharp, and when the Jedi finally liberated Naboo, Sabe refused to celebrate it. She wandered the ruins of the palace. Her loyalty to the Queen transformed into a promise that she would find the truth behind why she died. The Federation's motives never added up. There was no need for this slaughter. So, Sabe had turned to the shadows. She dug through intercepted transmissions, stolen records, whispers from the underworld, tracing the threads of Naboo's invasion, until she found them converging on a single being, hidden in Naboo's security cameras and encrypted transmissions. The man called Maul. For years, Sabe tried to follow Maul's trail, training herself as a hunter, an infiltrator, a marksman. Her obsession consumed her. She began diving deep into who the Sith were, piecing together fragments of their history, realizing soon that Maul was probably only the tip of the spear. He was probably not the mastermind behind all of this, but merely a weapon being used by someone even more powerful. Her hunt eventually led her to the industrial sector, where she finally saw him again. But not just Maul. Through her binoculars, Sabe saw Maul standing with Dooku and a hooded figure who she knew must be the leader. The three of them spoke briefly, and Sabe managed to sneak into the hangar, placing a tracking beacon on Maul's ship. She then followed Maul to Felucia, waiting in the tall plants, planning to kill Maul and finally begin getting revenge for Padme. But when Sabe saw Dooku arrive, she hesitated. The two Sith fought each other, and Sabe realized that she and Maul have a common enemy. So, she'd fired through the fog, not for Maul but for Dooku, and now she stood in front of Maul, proposing an alliance. They worked together to take down the true orchestrator of the Naboo blockade, a common enemy. Maul bared his teeth, wondering if she could be trusted. He asked what's in this for both of them, and Sabe said it was simple. For her, revenge on the man who took everything from her, Queen Amidala. Padme died under her watch, and for Maul, he will be free of this man. He can take over the profits of the Federation when Sidious is gone. Sabe told Maul that he's not meant for galactic politics. He can kill this figure, go off into the Outer Rim, use the profits to create a crime empire if he so chooses. But above all, they both get revenge on this man. Revenge for Padme on Sabe's end, and revenge for the betrayal on Maul's end. Finally, Maul let go of the rage, and he told her that they can do this together. In each other, there was a reflection of what the dark side had taken: purpose, loyalty, hope, family. Maul knew that Sidious could not be reached by strength alone. To strike at him, they would need chaos, a great distraction. Palpatine was protected by the entire Republic, but if they can just get the Jedi out of the way, then they may have a chance. So, Maul proposed that they turn one of Sidious's oldest pawns against him. Hours later, Maul would infiltrate the Republic's high-security prison using Palpatine's entry codes. He cut through guards and security panels until he found Nute Gunray locked into a dim cell. The Neimoidian's fear would turn to confusion and then anger as Maul told him the truth that Sidious is Chancellor Palpatine. Every order Gunray had followed had been part of Palpatine's climb to power. Rage overtook the former Viceroy's cowardice. He'd been humiliated, imprisoned, erased, and now Maul offered a chance at vengeance. Together, they would escape the prison and flee to Neimoidia, where Gunray still had access codes buried deep in the Federation's archives. Within just days, the dormant fleets of droids that were waiting for the Clone Wars were stirring to life again. But not just the droids on Neimoidia, but also the reserves in waiting that were deep in the Outer Rim. On Coruscant, everything seemed normal, but Palpatine was on edge. He lost contact with Dooku and Maul, and when the attack finally came, it would be devastating. Hundreds of Federation warships jumped from hyperspace out into Coruscant, the galactic capital that did not yet have nearly enough defenses for this. Droids were pouring into the lower levels as the Jedi scrambled to respond, moving quickly across the planet as explosions rippled through the city. Windu and Fisto took command in the air, piloting the upper levels of Coruscant's skyline, moving to dismantle a landing ship. Plo led a strike team through the city streets, clearing waves of droids. Shakti joined Sazy Tin in the skies, alongside many more Jedi. Across the city, green and blue sabers cut through the unexplainable attack from the Federation. There was no method to this madness. The droids seemed to have no clear target. This was because the droids were all a distraction. Amid the chaos, Sidious was watching from his office window, trying to piece it all together, until Maul stepped into the office. Sidious finally understood that all of this was purely for revenge. The two Sith would lunge at each other, and their duel would tear through the office, sabers carving through furniture as they moved towards the window overlooking the burning city. Sidious was impressed with Maul. The Zabrak was strong, and of course, Sidious had trained his every move. As they fought, finally moving towards the window overlooking the burning city, and everywhere they could look, explosions were shaking the buildings. Droids were pouring down. Jedi were trying desperately to fight back as Coruscant security guards were moving down, but in the office, Sidious unleashed a new storm of lightning. Maul held his ground, pushing Sidious towards the window, and from a distant rooftop, Sabe exhaled slowly and fired. The shot pierced the glass, striking Sidious in the shoulder, spinning him backwards to see where the shot came from. Maul seized the moment, cutting through Sidious's side as Sidious crashed into the wall. The wound was burning deep, and Maul drove him back again. More sniper blasts pierced the office. Sabe kept firing, while Maul used these blasts to his advantage. Finally, one blast hit Sidious in the back of the leg. He fell down as Maul swung and finished it. Sidious would fall dead into the burning streets of Coruscant below, sliding down the building, consumed by the chaos he'd created. Maul stood in the wreckage of the Chancellor's office, and he knew Sabe was right. A life of politics and galactic rule was not meant for him. He was born for this chaos. And in space, as Gunray monitored the battle, he was pleased to be back in power. Maul would fly up, enter the command ship, and Gunray turned to him with glee, only for Maul to stab Gunray through the heart and order a full retreat for the armies. His job here was done. In the weeks that followed the sudden, mysterious, seemingly unplanned attack on Coruscant, the Jedi and Republic would find that Palpatine was the true target from the reborn Federation. At first, there was a deep sorrow and panic, but the truth about Palpatine spread everywhere, about the truth of him being the Sith Lord. Security recordings from his office, a red blade with his prints, a reliable witness in Sabe helped to expose Palpatine. Sabe would return to Naboo, and she ran to become the new senator for this world, per the request of the newly elected Queen Jamila. She spoke often of Padme Amidala as a symbol of what the Republic could be again. Every law Sabe voted for, every word she spoke in the Senate, was for her, and though Sabe would never stop missing Padme, she finally felt she was honoring her by living as she would have wanted. Far from that light, Maul disappeared into the Outer Rim. With the remains of the Trade Federation under his control, he turned its fleets and droid armies into the backbone of a new empire of crime. He ruled the underworld quietly, keeping order through fear. Planets in the unknown regions became his territory. Smugglers, pirates, bounty hunters swore loyalty to him, and soon Maul's shadow stretched across half the Outer Rim. He built a reputation as the ghost of the Sith, and the Jedi knew there may come a time when he goes too far. But for now, they focused on the Republic, as the crime factions that Maul was working to unite would begin tearing each other apart. Any unity in that lawless land could only last so long. The Jedi began spreading out from Coruscant as they were blinded to the rise of the Sith. Corporations were under heavy investigation. The Separatist alliance would never emerge. as the galaxy was much more fair under the new chancellorship by Bail Organa and the influence of Sabe by his side. The ghost of Qui-Gon would mourn the life that Obi-Wan and Anakin never got to truly have, and he worked with Yoda to help the Jedi become better than they were when he was still alive. And folks, that is our story for today. Yeah, the whole Trade Federation battle on Naboo, it's set up by Palpatine, so like the concept of what if the Federation won, it really, in reality, might not change a ton of stuff, right? But I wanted to take a path where, obviously, it does change a ton of stuff, and just focus mainly on Darth Maul and even Nute Gunray, a character that is slimy and I don't exactly love, but it's fun to, just focus on someone like that's motivations for all of this. So overall, I thought it was a fun story. Introduce Sabe, who in the comics has a role that is really intriguing after the rise of the Empire. So fun to include her in stories like this once in a while. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you want to see next, and I'll see you in the next video.